my name is Eric and I'm a sales engineer here at ControlByWeb. In this demo, I'll be covering the basics of our web interface or firmware for our 400 series devices. Thanks for joining us. Let's get started. So here you can see we're on the general settings. So this is the first tab inside of the X400 series firmware. It will list the current version that is loaded on the device, the serial number, which also acts as the MAC address, the input voltage, internal. So this 5 volt is designed for our temperature sensors, and it can also be used for contact sensors or water sensors as well. Latitude and longitude, this is a cool feature where you can actually program in where the device is located, and you can actually use it for scheduled tasks like sunrise and sunset instead of picking a specific time like 8 a.m. or 5 p.m. And then you also have the option to program the temperature sensors units, so when it displays on the control page, whether it's Fahrenheit, Celsius, or Kelvin. Moving on, we have the Network tab. This is where you will be able to insert your IP address. We recommend a static IP address so you can find the unit on your network. There is an option for DHCP, which is where your router on your network will assign the IP address to the unit. So if I click yes, you'll notice that it is blank, and that's because the router has assigned the network settings. And to get access to the IP address, you would need to log into your router and get that information. For the purpose of our webinar today, or demonstration, we're going to leave that selected as no. And anytime you make any network changes, you'll need to click submit and then remove power from the unit and then reapply for that specific network change to take effect. Moving on, we have the Advanced Networks tab. This is where you'll find Modbus, TCP/IP. You can click the address table and it will give you all the different registers and IOs that are being used and the specific address you would need to use to access that. Remote services, this is where if you're using a cloud service, specifically ControlByWeb.cloud, you would enter in that information here, and then our unit will establish the communication. If you're using SNMP, you can enable that as well. And then there's the MIB file, and then IP filtering. If you are familiar with that, then you would just assign a range for our unit, and then it would just utilize an IP address in there. And you'll notice there, network settings will require a reboot to take effect. Next, we have the email settings tab, and this is important if you want to have email alerts or email to text alerts being sent out. Here I'm just using a free email service, SNMTP2Go, but you can use any type of email server from Gmail, Microsoft, and a host of others. And there will be specific settings to each email server that you would need to program in, which I've already done here. And once you're done on the X400 series devices, you can have up to 8 different email addresses, whether that's going to be phone numbers for email to text. And to figure out how to do that, you would just need to Google your specific cell phone carrier settings, and then do your phone number and then add those specific settings, and then you can get those email to text alerts. Next is passwords. Here we have administrator, manager, and user. When you log into the unit initially, if you have, and for the purposes of this, you can change and have a new password, so you can give this out. So when you go and access the unit, the username would be admin, and then if you have a manager, and then for a user, and then just the specific passwords related to the device. Next, when we move on to date and time, we can set the time and date manually, or we can have it sync with an NTP server, and you can enter in the host name and select how frequently you want to update based on the NTP server and getting that current time. And then daylight savings, you can enable that or disable that as well. Backup and storage is the next section. This is really useful for firmware updates, as our unit will default back to factory when you do a firmware update. So in here, you can come in and export the settings as a .txt file. And then once you've done a firmware update, you can come back to the Update and Restore tab, click Import Settings, and then have everything, all that hard work that you've done, uploaded back on the device again. This is also useful, let's say if you had another device that you wanted to upload the same settings to. Let's say you have a big project and you have multiple devices and they need to have the same settings. You can come in, have a new device, click Import Settings. You can just use that original file that you downloaded and just click Import, and it will automatically import all that data that you've already done. Going on to the next section, we have devices. So in the X400 series, you have expansion modules, and that's what you would see here. These will connect locally to the X400, or we also have, you can see right here, remote X410. So this is a device that we have set up in our office, and this just allows us to have access to other ControlByWeb devices. So whether that's locally or through the network or even on different networks. So the expansion modules are connected with a ribbon cable up to the X400, and then the X410 is connected, whether that's through the network or through an Ethernet switch. You can come in and you can find devices. So when we click Find, it's going to scan. It's looking on our scan. Here's an expansion module that was connected, and as well as these other ones. And you can see we also have these other ControlByWeb devices set up, and we can click and add those. So really quick, if I just add on this one really quick, we can give it a device name. We can select the model, and then we can also enter in the control and admin passwords, just so that there's not any issues in having the two units communicate with each other. When I go back, let's say if I have a device on a different network, or I don't have expansion modules and I need to add or find a device, I'll need to do it manually, which is the Add Device tab. I can come in, rename it whatever I need to, select the model. So these are all of the different ControlByWeb devices that we have, whether past or present ones. Enter in the serial number, and it's also the MAC address for if you ever need that, and then the IP address, the port number, so the host or the master device can find this slave unit, so to speak, on a different network, and you can enter the control page and how often you want this master device to pull or keep the connection alive, so to speak. Okay, so here we have the I/O Setup tab. This is where we will program and rename any of our inputs and outputs, from relays, digital inputs, one-wire sensors, thermocouples, analog inputs, registers, the VM, which is the power coming into the unit to power up the internals, and then timers. So here we're on the relays tab, and when we originally had scanned, these are our local expansion modules connected up to the X400. These are our high current relays, and then the LC is just for low current. I can come in and click Edit, and this is going to be the same for any one of these relays on here. I can come in, change the name, change the on and off text, and then I can even specify which device it is. And the device relay groups are important. They allow you to group more than one relay together. So when you use control logic, you can actually trigger multiple relays in a group. Local relay number is important. It is used in the state.xml, state.json, and even the log files. So if we don't assign a local number to any one of our IOs, it will not show up inside of any of the logs or the state files as well. And you can also give it a power up state. So when power is removed from the device and then power back on, you can have it automatically be in a specific state. Or with the pulse time, this is just latching a relay closed for a certain amount of seconds that you specify. Digital inputs. So this is for our optically isolated digital inputs. Our inputs need 4 to 26 volts to turn on. You can come in, edit those as well. A cool feature about our inputs is on the mode. You have a simple on-off, so voltage is present or absent. And then we also have a counter and a frequency. Counter is really cool feature that you can use for digital pulse meters. Anytime you want to count the number of times it turns on. And then you can also have the frequency as well. And you would be able to actually add a slope and an offset to that. For the purpose of the demo today, we're just going to do a simple on-off. You can even have advanced features. We can measure the total on time. So every time the digital input turns on, it will continuously measure that time. And this is specific to our 400 series firmware. One-wire sensors. This is where we can come in, add all of our temperature sensors, and just click add. And it will automatically find all the temperature sensors connected and just go ahead, rename it, assign it a local number. And even for remote sensors, this is for any ControlByWeb devices that you've wanted to add on. You can add those here as well. Thermocouples, temperature, really simple there. Analog inputs, so this is any of our 0 to 5, 0 to 10, or 4 to 20 milliamp sensors. We can come in, click edit, and rename it like normal. And then the slope and the offset is where we want to have engineered values. So when we have 0 to 5 or 0 to 10 volts, that doesn't tell us much. And so we want to have an engineered value, whether that's PSI, millimeters, any type of value, we would go in and make that change. The device mode is, how is this analog input set up? Is it single-ended? So is that, 0 to 5, 0 to 10? And with some of our other devices, we also have 4 to 20 milliamp built in as well, which would be displayed under this drop-down. Register values, they allow us to do a lot of different logic. They're variables that do not hold a value, and we can come in, and this one is being used in some logic, but we can come in and rename it. We can give it a value. So a register value just is an external variable that allows us to do more logic. And then remote registers is just specific to any other devices that we have connected. Voltage in, really simple. You can come in, rename it. Okay, so now next we have the timer section. You can see here I've created 2 different timers. If you have temperature monitoring and if you have a freezer, sometimes you don't want email alerts going out right away, so we can actually create a timer to help us evaluate some logic, which we can get into. Okay, the next section we have the control logic. So this is where we can have scheduled, conditional, automatic reboot, or override schedules. So scheduled task is anything that we want to have reoccurring, whether that's hourly, weekly, monthly, yearly. we can come in and we can set a certain condition. So right here, I just have a scheduled task. I want it to, you can have different modes on it. I've just set it to normal. And I can come in, select the start date and time. We can evaluate it, a condition if we need to. This is only specific if at the scheduled time we need to look at a different IO just to make sure whether we're going to complete an action or not. But here I've just, for the sake of our demo today, here I'm just triggering a relay to turn on at 8. So let's just say like a door lock. I have it continuing, I have it repeating weekly. So we can even get down to the seconds. So seconds all the way up to yearly. And then I can select the days or deselect them based on it. And I can have it continuous or have it in on a specific date. And click Save Changes. And what's important to know when we're doing control logic is we always need to set a false condition, so to speak. So right here, if we set the relay to turn on at 8 a.m., the relay will remain on until we tell it to turn off. So we had to set a second condition, which would end at 5 p.m., so that we can have the relay turn off. And so that's a little bit about our scheduled task. Conditional. This is set up in the form of an if-then statement. So right here, I've created some conditional tasks for battery voltage. Let's say if you have a solar panel, you want to get an email alert notifying you when the battery voltage drops below. Let's say if you had a 24-volt system and you wanted to know when the batteries got below 20, you could have it send you an email notification. So here, we utilized a timer. So thinking back to our IO setup, when we were under the timer section, I've just created a defrost timer. So we can come in and click Edit. This just says room temperature because that's how we renamed our temperature sensor. What I'm saying in this conditional statement is if my room temperature is greater than or equal to a value of 75 degrees Fahrenheit, then I want to set a defrost timer to a specific value, and it's done in seconds. So right here, I've set it for 5 minutes or 300 seconds, and I've just started the timer and I just click Save. Now, as soon as the temperature sensor gets above 75, we then want to start the timer. But let's say we're just going through a defrost cycle. Defrost cycle ends after 5 minutes, as an example. Let's say, we don't want to get notified about, every time, the unit is going into a defrost. So then we create another condition to say if my defrost timer expires, so our 5 minutes is up, and let's say the temperature sensor is now reading 78 degrees. So now we know that the defrost cycle has ended, but the system is still out of range. Then we want to send that email notification letting us know that something is wrong. So now we will come down to our then statement and then select an action to then send the email, and then we'll just go ahead and click Save on that. All right, moving on. Now we're looking at the automatic reboot task. This is if we want to ping an IP address. Right here, there's applications where you have an IP camera, and let's say it tends to freeze up. So you want to be able to power cycle the power going to the camera to allow it to reboot. And so here we can actually have our unit ping that IP. And if after a certain amount of time the IP camera is still not responding, we can then set an action to turn a relay off or on until the IP camera successfully is rebooted. and our unit is successfully pinging the unit again. And you can just connect, one of our relays up to the power of the IP camera to allow our unit to power cycle that. Lastly, under the control logic, we have override schedules. This is useful for certain holidays. So if you have a magnetic door lock that you do not want to open on a specific holiday, business hours are not open, we're not in the office, then we just want to have the door locked. We can set an override schedule to then take effect over the normal schedule that we had indicated up here. The next section under control logic is basic script. This is where you can upload a script file to accomplish more complex logic. I've just loaded in a simple script here, which we have more information on scripts under our support tab, and under tutorials we have a basic script where we have a lot of good information about different scripts that you can use with our units. Next, we have the logging and cloud portion. So this is specific to our 400 series firmware as well. We can select how often we want to log specific IOs, and we can even click the view log. So if you wanted to obtain the log file from the unit, you can come in to the unit and grab that as well. And then we can come down and select which IOs we would like to log. And then if you have our optional cloud service, this is a paid service, which we have more information on our website about. You can have our unit push logs to the cloud, and our cloud will actually log that information as well. And then if you're using other advanced network settings, you can enable these as well to view if there are any issues in the communication aspect of that. And then lastly, you can schedule a log file. So you can come in and have it send out daily. You just click enabled, and then you can just select the email that you would like to send it to. Last, we have the control and monitoring page. So this is where we get to see everything that is happening, all of our sensors, all of our inputs, relays, and even those register values. So I can see everything here, and you can come in and you can select control page setup, where you can come in and add in gaps and add titles to specific sections. We can edit whether we want to see buttons and colors, so we can just make this easy for the end user to look at. And then also on the control page, we can add in, so by default we just have the ControlByWeb logo, but you can come in and add a company logo, a header text. This is important for those email notifications. So when I get an email notification, the subject line, it's going to say X400, and then it's going to say trigger, and then the conditional statement that is sending the email notification on that we had selected. So you can rename this to be whatever you need it to be, whatever makes the most sense for the end user. And then we also have a footer text, so you could say, for support, and then whether it's controlbyweb.com or a phone number or another email address for the end user to contact. And then lastly, we just have the graph. We can graph the log file, so we can come in, select different IOs. If you want to see how things are changing over time, we can come in and we can select the different dates and times to view how things are trending. Thanks for joining. We hope this demo helped you understand our X400 series devices interface. If you'd like to schedule a live demo, click on the Contact tab and select the Schedule a Free Live Demo button. For questions, contact us at 435-750-5999 or email us at support@controlbyweb.com.